The lake froze solid in late December. That was normal. Everyone in town knew the routine, first the shallow edges, then the center, then the deep quiet certainty that winter had locked everything in place. By January, people walked across it without thinking. Snowmobiles cut lazy scars from shore to shore. Kids drilled holes for ice fishing and laughed when the lines went slack. The lake felt safe. I told myself that as I stepped onto the ice just after sunset, pulling my sled behind me. The air was sharp enough to burn, the kind of cold that turns every sound brittle. My boots squeaked against the surface, a high-pitched complaint swallowed quickly by the open space. The cabin on the far side belonged to my uncle. He'd passed the year before, and the place had been sitting empty ever since. I volunteered to check on it, mostly because no one else wanted to cross the lake after dark. The snow was thin, wind-scoured in places, and the ice beneath it was clear enough to see down into the black. I didn't like looking too long. Even when you know it's thick, your brain still whispers about what's underneath. Halfway across, the lake made a sound. Not a crack. Not the sharp report people warn you about. This was lower. Longer. A groan that rolled beneath my feet like something stretching in its sleep. I froze, heart hammering, breath fogging the air. The sound faded, leaving only the faint hiss of wind. Temperature shift, I muttered, repeating something I'd heard 100 times. I kept walking. The farther I went, the quieter it got. The shore lights behind me dimmed until they were just a suggestion, and ahead, the cabin was only a darker shape against darker trees. That's when I noticed the first mark in the ice. A long line beneath the surface, pale and curved, running parallel to my path. It wasn't a crack, no jagged edges, no branching. It looked pressed. Like something had been dragged along the underside of the ice. I stopped and crouched, squinting through the clear patches. The line moved. Just a little. I stood up fast, heart thudding, and scanned the lake. Nothing. The ice was still. The line was gone. I laughed once, sharp and nervous, and forced myself forward. Cold does things to your eyes. To your thoughts. Another sound rolled up through the soles of my boots. This one felt closer. I reached the cabin without incident, unlocked the door, and stepped into the stale, cold-smelling interior. The place was exactly as my uncle had left it, chair by the window, fishing gear stacked neatly, calendar still turned to the wrong month. I checked the pipes, the generator, the windows. Everything fine. When I stepped back outside, night had fully settled. The lake stretched out under the stars, smooth and dark, the ice reflecting faint points of light. That's when I saw the footprints. They led from the tree line behind the cabin, straight out onto the lake. Bare feet. The prints were shallow, edges softened by blowing snow, but unmistakable. Toes. Heels. A human stride. I followed them to the edge of the ice and stopped. They didn't go anywhere. The footprints ended 5 steps out, stopping abruptly, as if whoever made them had simply vanished. I swallowed and turned back toward the cabin. Behind me, the lake groaned again, longer this time, deeper. I didn't stay. I locked up and started back across the ice, pulling the sled faster now, breath coming in sharp bursts. The darkness pressed close, the stars above feeling too distant to help. About a third of the way back, I heard something new. A knock. Not from the surface, but from below. 3 slow taps traveled up through the ice, spaced evenly, like someone knocking on a door. I stopped without meaning to. The tapping came again, directly beneath my feet. I staggered back, heart slamming, and the sound followed, staying centered under me no matter where I stepped. "Stop it," I whispered, knowing how stupid that sounded. The ice beneath me grew clearer, the snow thinning as if brushed aside from below. Something pale moved in the dark water. Not a fish. Not a shadow. A shape, long and smooth, gliding just beneath the ice, following my movements with lazy precision. I ran. The ice protested with sharp cracks now, spiderwebbing sounds racing outward with every step. The thing below surged to keep pace, its pale outline pressing up, distorting against the frozen surface. The tapping turned into scraping. I burst off the ice and onto solid ground, collapsing to my knees, lungs burning. Behind me, the lake went still. No cracks. No sounds. Just a smooth, dark surface reflecting the stars like nothing had ever been wrong. I didn't tell anyone what happened. People don't listen when you say the lake followed you. That night, though, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I heard it again. A familiar, patient sound. 3 slow taps. Coming from beneath the floor. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt that pressure again, the sense of something beneath me, something vast and unhurried, matching my movements with ease. By morning, I'd convinced myself it had been stress. Cold. An overactive imagination sharpened by grief and darkness. The lake was just a lake. That lie held until noon, when my phone buzzed. Missing person alert. Local fisherman last seen on lake. Search ongoing. The name made my stomach drop. Evan Mercer. Ice fisherman. Quiet guy. Experienced. Gone. They found his truck at the usual access point. His sled was still hitched. His auger sat beside a half-drilled hole. No sign of him. By late afternoon, half the town had gathered on the shore. Snowmobiles idled. People murmured in low voices, eyes drawn again and again to the smooth expanse of ice. I stood at the edge, hands in my pockets, and stared. That's when I saw the line again. Just beneath the surface, pale and curved, stretching from the center of the lake toward the shore, toward us. I stepped back. The searchers went out in pairs, roped together, moving carefully. They marked the ice, drilled test holes, called Evan's name into the cold. The lake answered with silence. Then, a sound. A groan rolled across the surface, deeper than before, vibrating through boots and bones alike. Conversations died instantly. Everyone froze. The ice near the center of the lake darkened. Something pressed upward. Not breaking through, just leaning into the ice from below, bowing it slightly, like a hand against glass. The search leader shouted to retreat. Too late. The ice cracked with a sound like splitting stone. A long fracture raced outward, and the surface sagged, dipping low enough for black water to slosh up through the fissure. The shape beneath surged. I saw it clearly then. Not a single body, but many shapes fused together, limbs stretched too long, torsos bent and smoothed by time and cold. Pale forms tangled and drifting, all moving as one. Faces pressed up from below. Eyes open. Watching. The ice held. Barely. The shape drifted back, sinking slowly into the depths, leaving the surface smooth once more. The crack sealed with a sharp, ringing snap, freezing over almost instantly. No one spoke. The search was called off. That night, the town was quiet in a way that felt deliberate. Lights stayed on. Doors stayed locked. No one mentioned what we'd seen. At midnight, the lake made its way back into my life. I woke to the sound of ice shifting, not outside. Inside. A low groan rolled up through the house, followed by the unmistakable sound of water moving beneath the floorboards. I got out of bed and followed it, bare feet cold against wood, down the hall, to the front door. Frost spread across it from the bottom up, delicate and fast. Then came the knocking. 3 slow taps. On the door. I can't, I whispered, backing away. The tapping continued, patient and rhythmic. A voice followed, muffled and wet, like it had traveled a long way to reach me. Cold out here. My blood turned to ice. The voice was Evan's. "I found something," it said. "You should see." The handle began to turn. The house creaked, responding to pressure that shouldn't have existed. The air grew colder, the smell of lake water seeping into the room. I ran. I grabbed my keys, my coat, didn't look back. I drove until the sun started to rise, until the roads were bare and the trees thinned and winter loosened its grip. I never returned. Months later, in spring, the lake thawed. They found bones along the shore as the ice receded. Too many. Too old. The official explanation was erosion. Shifting currents. Bad luck. But sometimes, when I dream, I'm back on the ice. And beneath me, something vast and patient drifts closer. Listening. Waiting for the knock to be answered. Story 2, The Lake That Holds Its Breath. Winter arrived early that year. Not the gentle kind that dusts rooftops and makes everything look clean, but the heavy kind. The kind that presses down on the world and refuses to leave. By early December, the lake outside our town had frozen solid, its surface pale and glassy beneath layers of snow. People said it was safe. They always did. The locals called it Miller's Lake. It sat just beyond the tree line, about a mile from the last streetlight. No cabins. No docks. Just a wide, silent stretch of ice surrounded by pine forest that never seemed to move, even in the wind. I went there alone. That was the first mistake. I told myself it was for the quiet. My life had been loud lately, arguments, phone calls, expectations piling up like snowdrifts. I wanted somewhere empty. Somewhere that didn't ask anything of me. The lake had always been that place when I was younger. Frozen or not, it felt familiar. The sky was already dimming when I parked my truck near the tree line. Snow crunched under my boots as I stepped out, breath fogging in front of me. The air smelled sharp and metallic, like ice and old water. No birds. No wind. Just silence so complete it rang in my ears. The lake stretched out before me, smooth and pale beneath a thin layer of snow. I tested the ice near the edge with my boot. Solid. Thick. The cold had been relentless for weeks. I stepped out onto it. Each footfall echoed faintly, a dull, hollow sound beneath the ice. I walked slowly, hands in my coat pockets, watching the way my breath drifted and vanished. The world felt paused. Like I was the only thing still moving. That's when I heard it. A crack. Not loud. Not sharp. Just a soft, distant pop, like ice settling. I stopped. Listened. Nothing else followed. No spreading fracture. No splash. I told myself it was normal. Lakes make noise in the cold. Everyone knows that. I kept walking. About 50 yards out, I noticed something dark beneath the ice. A shape, barely visible through the cloudy surface. At first, I thought it was a log. Or weeds frozen in place. Then it shifted. Just slightly. My stomach tightened. I crouched, brushing snow aside with my glove, pressing my face closer to the ice. The shape was deeper than I thought. Human-shaped. Upright. Like someone standing beneath the surface, frozen mid-step. I pulled back hard, heart hammering. That's impossible, I told myself. People don't end up like that. Not standing. Not preserved so neatly. I stood and took a step backward. The ice groaned beneath me. This time, the sound was closer. Louder. I turned toward shore, suddenly aware of how far out I'd walked. The tree line felt farther away than before, swallowed by the dimming light. My breath came faster now, fogging my vision. Then I heard something else. Footsteps. Behind me. Slow. Measured. Crunching softly on snow-covered ice. I spun around. No one was there. The lake stretched empty in every direction. No tracks except my own. No movement. The shape beneath the ice was gone. I swallowed hard and laughed quietly, the sound thin and brittle in the cold air. Get it together, I muttered. I turned back toward shore and started walking faster. The footsteps followed. Not matching my pace. Staying just behind me. Always the same distance. I stopped abruptly. So did they. I stood frozen, every nerve screaming, listening to my own heartbeat. Slowly, I turned my head. Still nothing. But the silence had changed. It felt heavier. Pressurized. Like the lake was holding its breath. I forced myself forward again, breaking into a hurried walk. The ice beneath my boots began to sound different, less solid. More hollow. Each step sent a vibration through my legs, up into my spine. Halfway back, the crack came again. This time, it split outward. A jagged line raced across the ice at my feet, spiderwebbing fast. I stumbled, arms flailing, barely catching myself as the surface shifted beneath me. The footsteps were closer now. Right behind me. I didn't look back. I ran. The ice groaned and snapped with every step, the sound sharp and violent now. I could hear water moving beneath me, dark and alive. The air filled with the sound of splitting ice and something else, something wet, dragging itself across the surface. Just as I reached the edge of the lake, the ice gave way behind me with a deafening crack. I dove forward, slamming onto solid ground as freezing water exploded upward behind me. Something surfaced in that hole. Something pale and wrong, hands gripping the broken edge of ice. I didn't stay to see more. I scrambled to my feet and ran into the trees, lungs burning, legs screaming. I didn't stop until I reached my truck, fumbling with the keys until the engine roared to life. Only then did I look back. The lake was still. Perfectly smooth. Unbroken. No hole. No cracks. Just my footprints leading out onto the ice. And another set beside them. I didn't tell anyone what happened. That's what people always say, but in my case, it was true. How do you explain footprints on a lake that resets itself? How do you describe something that leaves no evidence behind? I told myself it was shock. A trick of fear and cold. By morning, the lake looked harmless again, dusted with fresh snow like nothing had ever happened. But the dream started that night. I dreamed of standing beneath the ice. The world above was warped and distant, light bending strangely through frozen water. I could see my own boots overhead, walking away. Leaving me there. My lungs didn't burn. I didn't need to breathe. Something else was with me. Watching. I woke every time with the same sensation, pressure on my chest, like water pressing in from all sides. 3 nights later, someone knocked on my door. It was nearly midnight. I hadn't been asleep. I'd been sitting in the dark, lights off, listening to the quiet hum of the house. When the knock came, it was slow and deliberate. 3 knocks. Evenly spaced. I didn't move. The knock came again. When I finally looked through the peephole, no one stood there. Just the empty porch and falling snow. But something caught my eye near the steps. Wet footprints. Leading away from my door. They didn't come back the next day, or the day after. But the lake started calling to me. Not with sound, with memory. With images that surfaced uninvited. The dark shape beneath the ice. The hands. I drove back a week later. I don't know why. I told myself it was closure. Curiosity. Anything but the truth. The lake was emptier than before. Snow untouched. The sky low and gray. I stood at the edge, heart pounding, staring out at the frozen surface. "Show yourself," I whispered. The ice answered. A deep, rolling crack echoed across the lake, radiating outward from the center. The snow shifted. The surface dipped. Something moved beneath it. Not just one shape. Many. They pressed upward, pale faces and hands visible now, frozen inches below the surface. All of them upright. All of them facing me. One of them smiled. The ice began to open. I turned to run, but my feet wouldn't move. Cold wrapped around my ankles, then my calves, seeping upward. The lake wasn't breaking this time. It was reaching. Hands burst through the ice, gripping my legs, my coat, pulling me down. The cold was instant. Crushing. The world above blurred and fractured as I was dragged beneath the surface. And then. Stillness. I stood on the lake bed, water clear and unmoving around me. The figures surrounded me now, their faces calm. Expectant. I understood then. The lake doesn't take people. It keeps them. Winter after winter. Layer after layer. Waiting. The ice sealed above me, the world dimming to a distant glow. And far above, new footprints appeared. Someone else had come to the lake. And the ice was strong enough again.